Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Boeing 737 instructional videos. My aim is, and always has been, for you to master the 737. The SAM management and high energy prevention is by far the hardest part. Therefore, in this video I will answer all the questions that I've received privately about a video that I posted some time ago. If you haven't watched it, I strongly recommend you to do so. I will put the link in the top right corner and also in the description. Alright then, without any music or intro that will just make you skip it anyway, let's just dive right in. So before we go through with the questions that I've received, I would like to refresh what we talked about last time about the energy state of this aircraft. So we'll try to refresh what I said in the other video. We're going to talk about the equation. Don't know if you remember it from the last video. And I'll try to make you understand for you to follow what I'm going to say next. So first of all, we have to understand the three energy in place when an aircraft descends. So we got kinetic, which is the speed, potential, it's the altitude, and chemical, it's the thrust. Okay, so let's imagine a descent, constant idle descent, so idle thrust, in which the speed is 250 knots, the altitude is steady decreasing, and the total value of the equation between kinetic, potential, and chemical, it's 10. So kinetic equals 5, potential is 5, and chemical, the thruster levers are closed, so it's 0. So let's imagine this is the existing scenario. So of course this is an static image. We are now descending, we're crossing to 1700-500 feet, speed 245 knots, and we are on path with the thrust levers closed. Now let's assign the value that we explained earlier. So the kinetic, it's 5, as you can see on the left hand side, the speed. The altitude is 5 on the right hand side, plus the thrust is 0, so the total of this equation is 10. Now let's imagine this other scenario. The image is another static image from another level, but the result is the same. So in this case, ATC is keeping us at level 350. So the pilot flying reduces the airspeed, thus in this way, reducing the value of the kinetic energy. So from 5, now the value reaches 0. And since we're leveled, the number of the altitude increases up to 10. If the thrust lever don't come in, then the total result of the equation is still 10. So when we get a descent, we can trade kinetic energy, lower down the nose in order to recover the path, as long, provided, that the thrust lever didn't come in. Excellent. Now we go back to the video that I've created, and here I will demonstrate when I will lower the nose, since no thrust was added, that the initial equilibrium speed was maintained. So we're going to lower the nose, we're going to increase the speed, therefore the formula is going to re-equalizate 5 plus 5, pardon my English. But the thrust didn't come in, so it didn't add any energy to the equation. The final result will always be 10, because the speed has been reduced and then re-increased. Thus, increasing the speed, increasing the rate of descent, up to the speed that we had when we got the shortcut. In that case, it was 245. Now let's see. So now that I have alt acquire, I'm gonna put a new altitude, 260, I'll press level change, and then I'm gonna go back to 245 knots, which was our initial existing speed. The thrust didn't come in, the thrust is still closed, we didn't waste any energy, there was a turbulence there, and now we're gonna recover the path, and once we are recovering the path, we can go back to VNAV. VNAV speed will indicate first, catching the path will indicate VNAV path. So now we're on the path, we're on VNAV path. Now let's see what happens if we add chemical energy to our equation. So the total result will not be 10 anymore. but it would be a higher number. Let's see. So that's it. This is the scenario. Same scenario as before, but this time the thrust lever comes in. So we still have a value of kinetic 5, potential 5, but this time we have 2 more for the thrust. Let's imagine that the thrust has been added for around 10 seconds. So it's just a figurative number. I'm going to add 2. So the new equilibrium value will be now 12. So something must be done in order to regain that equilibrium. And what can we do? We can increase the speed. The initial equilibrium speed 10 was 245 knots. Now we have a new equilibrium. We have to increase the speed to 250 knots, in this case only 5 knots more, to recover the path and descend with the new equilibrium, unless we use the speed brake, of course. In that case, we could be able to return to the existing equilibrium of 10. Now let's see the video. Now we'll show you what will happen. I'll pretend now I'm gonna level off a level 300. What will happen if you press VS like you correctly would with the step descent SOP? You put VS 2000, for example, but the thrust lever in this case came in. Even for a second, if the thrust lever comes in, you're gonna disrupt the equilibrium between speed and altitude. Now it's still at 2 to go. I have 2000. I'm following my SOP. Now I'm going to put 1000 feet a minute in the MCP. But again, I forgot my thrust. The thrust is in. The thrust keeps coming. And now it still tells me that I'm on profile because the 2000 helped out quite a bit. But now as we insert 1000 feet a minute, we're going to start losing the path. So as you can see now, we're in a situation where there is too much energy inside. In this case, kinetic and chemical energy basically is the engines. So now if we're going to get a lower altitude, now I'm going to go back to level 260. We're going to do exactly as we did before, and before worked out perfectly, but this time I press level change. As you can see, we already have the speed, the path is below us, and what we're going to do is basically going to parallel the path all the way down. Since we changed the equilibrium by increasing the thrust, the only thing to do is now increase the speed into the FMC and into the MCP. We're going to put 250 knots. Let's see if it works out. So now it's going to pitch down to get 250 knots. It's getting back on the path. I go back to VNAV and we have VNAV path. So guys, remember, every time you're in vertical speed, reduce your airspeed. Vertical speed and then speed back. Speed back. Initially I put 220 knots. Don't put the off speed yet at this altitude, but every time you're in vertical speed, reduce your airspeed in order to save the energy. Before we go into the question, I recommend you guys to treat this as a podcast. The video will not reflect what I'm talking about. So question time. This one is for sure the one I get asked the most. How do I know how much speed I need in order to find a new equilibrium to recover the path? So, well, basically, guys, let's think this. The higher you are, the less speed you need to recover the path. I'll give you an example. So if you're at cruise level, level 380, and you're 1,000 feet high, you might probably need only 5 knots more in the MCP and therefore in the FMC in order to recover the path. While if you are at level 220, 1,000 feet above, you might need 280 knots. And guys, remember, please, I cannot stress it enough. These are just numbers that I tell you now in front of my computer. Of course, every scenario is different, so don't take this number for rule, for the Bible. It's just my experience, so every scenario is different. Now let's do another example. You're at level 380 and you're 5,000 feet high. That's quite a high number, but at cruise level, that's high altitude, so level 380. Again, you don't need that much speed in order to recover the path. What I will do personally, I will go 270, 275 knots in order to recreate a new equilibrium speed. However, on the other hand, if you're at level 220, 5,000 feet high, I will go 320 knots speed brake out, because that's quite high. At level 130, 120, no point to increase the speed, in my opinion. Maximum speed I will go is 270, because anyway, after a few short seconds, you will have to raise the nose again, so decelerate again to go to 250. Below level 100, 5,000 feet high, speed brake for sure. And then at around 8,000 feet, I will slow down the aircraft, put out the flaps, 220 knots, flaps 5, speed brake out. If that doesn't work, I'll go 180, flaps 10, speed brake out. If you are at level 110, there is no need to increase your speed, because anyway you're gonna have to decelerate at level 100. While when you're below level 100, you have to use the speed brake anyway. So maximum speed is 250 knots. So that's why you can decrease the speed below level 100 until the up speed, and then use that energy, so from 210 to 250 knots, in order to pitch down and recover the path. Guys, again, these numbers are made out of more than 15 years of experience flying the 737. Don't take them for granted, but they're a good starting point. Just remember, the higher you are, the less speed you need to recover the path. And the lower you are, the more speed you need in order to recover the path. Just remember this. So the second question, what would be the trigger for me to deploy the speed brake in order to recover the path? So remember, guys, as I said in my previous videos, I always say the phrase when I have everything out. So what does it mean, everything out? It means an appropriate speed. So if I'm 5,000 feet high at level 220, I put 320 knots, and then I assess the path. If I see that the VNAV path is not catching the path, then I have to deploy the speed brake. Of course, because if you select 320 knots on the FMC and 320 knots in the MCP, then you will just parallel the path that you've just created. So in order to catch that path would be use the speed brake. So again, to recap, when do I have to use the speed brake? When you have the maximum speed achievable for that stage. If you are higher than level 100, it should be 320 knots. I usually go 320 knots maximum. People can go faster, of course, but I don't see any point to stay so close to the margin. So usually go 320 knots, and then I see, am I catching the path with these 320 knots? I am not, then I deploy the speed brake. While if I'm below level 100, on the other hand, for sure, just the speed brake will help me. The next question relates still to the video that we're discussing now, the one about the energy management. And it asked me, why is VS more beneficial for us than increasing the speed in this particular scenario? I will leave you the clip now. We're high, so we already anticipated with the level change. We deploy the speed brake, and now we're descending to level 110. What can we do? Let's think again. Can we increase the speed? Yeah, we could, but we're stopped at level 110. We have only 5,000 feet to go. So we can increase the speed, but in this case, the best thing, what I will do, is I'm going to go vertical speed. I can put 3,000 and keep the speed back to 220 knots. So in this case, we're not going to exaggerate with the rate of descent. It's still going to be 3,000. Speed brake is out. I have 3 to go, and I have 3,000 feet a minute. And then at 2 to go, I'm going to go 2,000, and at 1 to go, 1,000. So now it's 2 to go. I'll put 2,000 feet a minute. Speed brake is still out. The speed is in control. And as you can see now, below level 200, we have the up speed as well. So we can go back down to, we saw it earlier, flaps 40 speed is 133 plus 70, 203. So we can go back to 203 knots here in the MCP. And as you can see, is the up speed. Now it's the 1 to go, and I'm going to go back to 1,000 feet a minute. The speed is still under control. As you can see, we didn't accelerate much because we have the speed breakout. So why did I say that at this particular stage it would be more appropriate to use vertical speed with 3000 feet a minute? Because I wanted the speed back down, I kept the speed break out, and if we had increased the speed by using level change and increasing the speed to 280 knots with 5000 feet to go, we would have had an uncontrollable rate. So as you guys remember, we have to stay at 3000 feet to go, we have to be at 3000 feet a minute. So if we wanted up the speed to 280 knots, 300 knots in order to recover the profile, plus if we use the speed brake, we would have an uncontrollable rate, possibly exceeding the 3000 feet a minute by the time we reach the 3 to go. So the best action in this case, if we have this type of step descent, so ATC clears you from level 160 to level 110 and then to level 900 and then 5000 feet. So from 160 to 110, what I will use is vertical speed 3000, speed winded back, speed breakout. Why speed breakout? In order to run less track miles as possible and in order to have a controllable airspeed. If we don't deploy the speed brake with 3000 feet a minute, this aircraft will accelerate to 300 knots most likely, 320. We don't want that. We don't want to run extra miles. We want to keep the speed under control, the rate under control, and to run less track miles as possible on the ground. So from 160 to 110, speed breakout, wind back the speed, VS 3000, at 2 to go VS 2000, 1 to go VS 1000, and then once we get a further descent from level 110 to 900, what we're going to do? Again, vertical speed, 2000. The speed has been winded back, has been ready to the up speed. The speed brake has already been deployed. And then again, we get a descent to 5000 feet. In this case, vertical speed could be tricky because the speed might increase to 50 knots. So in this case, I will keep 250 speed breakout. That will give me a rate of 2000 feet a minute. And then I want to go, so at 6000 feet, I will go vertical speed, 1000, the speed winded back to the up speed. And that's it, waiting for the further descent. Last but not least, why it's better to use VS at that stage? Because imagine that you are again clear from 160 to level 110, so 5000 feet to go. You will have to press level change, increase the speed, and then at 3 to go press vertical speed, reduce the speed, reduce the vertical speed. It would be too much workload. So at that stage, I strongly recommend when you have that kind of step descent, you go vertical speed. Remember to reduce your airspeed. This is mandatory. Reduce your airspeed 3000, reduce your airspeed then 2000, 1000, and so on. So when you get a further descent of 2000 feet, vertical speed 2000 and then 1000. The speed, you leave it on the up speed, you don't touch it up until you get a good descent. So for example, from 110 to 5000, I will go level change 250 knots and increase the speed to 250 knots with a speed breakout if I'm still high. So guys, this is the end for this part. I'm still waiting for your question. If you have any further question, something else you want me to go through, just write me and I will try to do more videos about these frequently asked questions. I think you will find it quite interesting. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Or if you have any other questions, just write in the comments below. Thank you again for watching and have a safe flight.